Well, certainly a story making headlines today is Facebook's co-founder Chris Hughes coming out and saying the government needs to hold Mark Zuckerberg, quote, accountable. In an op-ed published in the New York Times this morning, Hughes says the social media platform has become so big and so powerful, it is threatening our democracy. Hughes is calling for the government to break up the tech giant, writing, "I don't think that Mark Zuckerberg can fix Facebook. I think only the government can." Now, for the co-founder of the publicly traded company to assert that it can't be fixed by the guy running the company. Certainly interesting, because we know that Chris Hughes, I believe, lived on the same floor with Mark Zuckerberg back when they were at Harvard. Chris Hughes was in charge of the business side of Facebook back before there really was a business side of Facebook. Rick, we certainly hear a lot about regulating the tech companies, and this story is getting an incredible amount of play to my mind today, because I kind of read it and say, yeah, I mean, a lot of people think this stuff. Is the tipping point coming where we might see government have a little bit of teeth?
It is getting a lot of play, and you could say it's getting overplayed in a way. I mean, I was kind of underwhelmed. I thought, oh, wow, one of the co-founders thinks they should break up his baby. I just didn't find the argument compelling, and I think you have to go back to what are we actually talking about here. And this is all, I mean, the main thing Facebook does is give you ads. I mean, this is all about giving you ads. Yes, they probably do know too much about you. I have personally, I still use it, but I've used every privacy feature I can, and I never sign into anything with Facebook, and I try to practice good privacy hygiene, I think a lot of Americans just don't care that much, and I think when you say, is it possible Washington can regulate this? First of all, I disagree that the only entity that can solve this problem is the government. Come on, seriously? Really? Washington, Congress is going to solve this problem? If there's one thing that I think maybe really does ring true is that the barriers to entry for anybody who might potentially compete with Facebook seem to be very difficult to get over, because Facebook can buy anybody, which they did with Instagram and WhatsApp. And how would you actually start a service that could compete with Facebook? That I don't have an answer to.
Well, and Sazi, I think the interesting question here for investors is, wouldn't the Facebook universe potentially be worth more if Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp were all separate publicly traded companies?
Well, first of all, Chris Hughes, who really cares about Chris Hughes? He hasn't been in the side of this company for a while. Let him, great, his op-ed, he's going to drive a lot of page views to New York Times, and that's all great for them. But I think, I was talking to John Chambers, former Cisco CEO, and he says regulation is coming to Silicon Valley. It has to. For years, they've been allowed to police themselves. It's just a matter of what it looks like. Break it up. Well, who's buying the rest of these pieces? Who's going to come in? They're going to have to still deal with a lot of problems that Facebook is dealing with now.
I don't think regulation is necessarily coming. I mean, here's one big problem. Antitrust rules and laws are set up to prevent price gouging. That is the main way we test whether somebody has monopoly power. How do you apply that for a free service? And I know it's not free because we're paying with data, but I'm sorry, we do not have the rules and the laws in place to even remotely begin how to figure that out.
All these companies are beasts. You break them up, and then Instagram is still collecting data. Their next owner, they're going to continue to amass more data.
Well, okay, so now I think we're getting to the heart of the issue here, which is that there are a bunch of different conversations which come out of, we need to break up Facebook. You're talking about breaking them up from a privacy perspective, and then Rick, you're noting that the actual laws on the book would have to be a consumer benefit perspective. So considering that there really are no data privacy laws that are stern enough that would require a breakup of Facebook, I think just sort of, let's call it for cosmetic reasons, you might come in and say, you've got to spin off Instagram, you've got to spin off WhatsApp, but what if Facebook parent company still owns 70 or 80% of each entity? What if it's like the Mark Zuckerberg but John Malone version of Facebook?
And why doesn't Google have to get broken up?
Well, but I mean, so what? What if Google is broken up into docs and maps and all that? If they kind of all funnel up to the same structure right now, I don't think it knocks down any of those barrier entries you're talking about.
I think the whole approach that we've heard out of Washington so far is overcomplicating the situation. It would be much easier for Congress to pass rules governing privacy. Data privacy and electronic privacy. There's even a model for that, which is the GDPR in Europe. You could take that and say, we don't think it needs to be that strict, but we're going to just use this framework to develop our own model. Why can't you just do that? And then you put rules into place that the tech giants have to abide by. That's a lot easier than saying, what is the right size of a social media network? I mean, there's no way.
Chris Hughes, why don't we break up Uber before it goes public? Uber Eats arguably has too much power. They're dominating the delivery space of fattening fast food. Let's break them up.
I mean, so we do.
Call to the show, Chris Hughes.
So we do, we have ways of estimating and trying to figure out when does a company have too much monopoly power, when does it have too much market share, and the normal way we do that is you see price gouging. That's the normal way you see it, and for the most part, it just does not apply in any of these cases.
Yeah. Chris Hughes, been on the show, been on the final round. So
have
free
him
to
back.
come back. He lives in the neighborhood. He said he's right down the street, I think, over in the West Village. Right, we're coming up here in the